My name is Alexa, and at 35 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing in my parents' grand living room on Christmas Eve, watching my 14-year-old daughter Emma run upstairs with tears streaming down her face. My sister Victoria stood there with that familiar smirk playing on her lips as she delivered her cutting remark. Maybe if you'd raised her better, she wouldn't be such an embarrassment to this family. My hands trembled with a rage I'd suppressed for far too long, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just another family gathering where I'd bite my tongue and endure their cruelty. This Christmas would be different from all the others. They thought I'd stay silent like always. They were wrong. Before I share what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you spending the holidays with family too? Please hit that like button if you've ever dealt with difficult family members, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, what unfolds in this Christmas tale will leave you speechless, and I promise you've never heard a family drama quite like this one. Growing up in the Harrison family meant living under the shadow of perfection, or at least the carefully crafted illusion of it that my parents Harold and Margaret had spent decades constructing. Our colonial mansion in Westchester County served as the backdrop for countless society gatherings where my mother would parade us around like prized showpieces, each child expected to reflect the family's impeccable reputation. My older brother Nathan, now 40, had followed the predetermined path flawlessly, becoming a renowned cardiac surgeon at Presbyterian Hospital, while my sister Victoria, 38, had carved her niche as a partner at one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. Then there was me, the family anomaly, the one who dared to deviate from their carefully orchestrated life plan. I became a single mother at 21 when Emma's father, a charming investment banker who'd swept me off my feet, disappeared the moment I showed him the positive pregnancy test. Rather than terminate the pregnancy, as my parents not so subtly suggested, I chose to keep my baby, instantly transforming from the family's golden girl to their greatest disappointment. While my siblings accumulated accolades and expanded their portfolios, I worked double shifts as a nurse at a community hospital, pouring every ounce of energy into raising Emma alone. My daughter grew into a brilliant young woman, maintaining straight A's while developing her artistic talents, but her quiet nature and preference for books over social gatherings made her an easy target for family criticism. Victoria had married Richard Sterling, an investment banker whose family name carried weight in financial circles, and together they produced twins, Bradley and Brittany, who at 10 years old had already mastered the art of looking down on others. Nathan's wife Claire came from old money, her trust fund allowing her to spend her days at the country club while their nanny raised their 3 children. Every family gathering followed the same script. Subtle jabs about my unfortunate situation, backhanded compliments about Emma being so well-adjusted considering, and constant comparisons between my modest life and their extravagant successes. My parents' obsession with appearances had only intensified over the years. Harold's commercial real estate empire had made him one of the wealthiest men in the county, while Margaret's position on various charity boards gave her the social standing she craved. They viewed their children as extensions of their brand, and I was the defective product they couldn't quite figure out how to market. Emma and I had become obligatory invitees to family functions, tolerated but never truly welcomed, our presence a reminder of what they considered my life's greatest failure. This particular Christmas, Emma had begged me not to attend the family gathering. She'd started noticing the patterns I'd tried so hard to shield her from. How her cousins received elaborate gifts while she got generic gift cards, how conversations would halt when we entered rooms, how her achievements were dismissed while Bradley and Brittany's mediocre efforts were celebrated. But I'd insisted we maintain the tradition, clinging to some naive hope that family meant something more than shared DNA. I spent weeks preparing, buying a new dress I couldn't afford and helping Emma create handmade jewelry as gifts, believing that maybe this year would be different. The moment we arrived at my parents' estate that Christmas Eve, I should have trusted my instincts and left. Margaret's first words weren't a greeting but a criticism of Emma's homemade dress, suggesting that perhaps I should invest in proper clothing instead of wasting money on art supplies. Victoria's twins immediately circled Emma like sharks, pointing out that her dress looked like something from a thrift store, their parents doing nothing to correct their behavior. Richard offered his usual condescending financial advice while Nathan made jokes about how at least one Harrison child was keeping the nursing profession afloat. Throughout the afternoon, the insults came disguised as concern and advice. Claire suggested a workout routine for Emma, implying she was getting a bit soft around the edges, while Victoria recommended a therapist who specialized in social anxiety and other developmental issues. My father pulled me aside to remind me that it wasn't too late to go back to school for a real career, and my mother kept mentioning her friend's son who was willing to date a woman with baggage. Each comment was a tiny cut, but I'd grown so accustomed to bleeding in silence that I barely noticed how deep the wounds had become until I saw them reflected in Emma's eyes. The formal dinner was announced with the ringing of Margaret's antique silver bell, and as we took our assigned seats at the far end of the table, I noticed the place cards had small, subtle differences. While my siblings' cards bore gold embossing, ours were plain white, a detail that might seem insignificant to outsiders but spoke volumes in the Harrison family hierarchy. Emma squeezed my hand under the table, and I squeezed back, both of us bracing for what was to come, neither of us knowing that this would be the last time we'd ever sit at this table as victims rather than victors. The dinner began with Harold's traditional Christmas toast, his crystal glass catching the light from the chandelier as he raised it high, his voice booming with false warmth as he spoke of family achievements and legacy. He praised Nathan's recent medical breakthrough, Victoria's landmark case victory, and even managed to compliment Richard's investment acumen and Claire's charity work, but when his gaze swept past Emma and me, it was as if we were empty chairs. The omission was so blatant that Emma's face flushed crimson, her fingers trembling as she reached for her water glass, and I saw Victoria's lips curl into that satisfied smirk she'd perfected since childhood. The first course had barely been served when Victoria decided to twist the knife deeper, her voice carrying that false sweetness she used in courtrooms to devastating effect. "You know, Alexa, I was just telling Richard how remarkable it is that Emma manages so well without a father figure. Though I suppose when you've never known differently, you can't miss what you've never had." She paused, letting her words sink in before adding, "Still, it must be so difficult for her at school events when all the other children have both parents attending." The table fell silent for a moment, everyone pretending to be deeply interested in their butternut squash soup while Emma stared at her barely touched bowl, her shoulders beginning to shake. Claire jumped in with her own brand of cruelty wrapped in faux concern, reaching across the table as if to pat Emma's hand while saying, "Have you considered getting her professional help, Alexa? I know an excellent therapist who specializes in children from broken homes. It's nothing to be ashamed of, really. Mental health issues often run in families, and with your history of poor judgment, it might be wise to intervene before adolescence makes things worse." She delivered this assessment while her own children sat with glazed eyes, clearly medicated to maintain their perfect behavior, but irony was lost on Claire when she was in attack mode. Nathan couldn't resist adding his medical expertise to the conversation, chuckling as he cut into his meat with surgical precision. "You know what's fascinating? There's actually been research on genetic predisposition to poor decision-making. Some people just inherit the loser gene, and no amount of intervention can change that trajectory. Not that I'm saying Emma inherited anything specific, but when you look at patterns across generations, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?" He winked at Richard as if they'd shared some brilliant inside joke, completely oblivious to, or perhaps energized by the tears now rolling down Emma's cheeks. Margaret chose that moment to launch her own assault, setting down her fork with deliberate precision as she studied Emma with the critical eye of someone appraising damaged goods. "Emma, dear, have you considered doing something about your appearance? You're getting to that age where young ladies need to pay attention to their presentation. Your hair is so limp, and that complexion, well, I suppose not everyone can afford proper skincare routines. And your posture. Slouching like that makes you look even heavier than you are. No wonder you struggle socially at school. First impressions matter, and frankly, you're not making a good one." Each word was calculated to wound, delivered with the authority of someone who believed their cruelty was constructive criticism. Richard, perhaps emboldened by wine or simply enjoying the blood sport, decided to share his own philosophical musings on our situation. The real tragedy here is the cycle these situations create. Single mothers raising daughters who'll likely become single mothers themselves. It's like watching a social experiment in real time. These kids from broken homes, they're essentially damaged goods from the start. No strong male influence, no proper family structure. No wonder they can't form healthy relationships later in life. I've seen it countless times in my charity work with underprivileged youth. He spoke about us as if we were case studies rather than people sitting at his table, his words clinical and detached. The twins, Bradley and Brittany, had been whispering and giggling throughout dinner, but when Emma presented her handmade jewelry gifts to the family, their mockery became vocal and vicious. "Oh my God, did you seriously make these yourself? What are we, 5 years old, doing craft time?" Brittany held up the delicate silver bracelet Emma had spent hours creating, dangling it like trash. "This looks like something from a dollar store clearance rack. Don't you have money for real presents?" Bradley added, "My mom says homemade gifts are what poor people give when they can't afford to shop properly. Maybe next year just don't give anything. It's less embarrassing for everyone." Their parents said nothing to correct them, Victoria actually nodding slightly as if her children were simply stating facts. The final blow came when Victoria stood to make an announcement, tapping her wine glass for attention with the self-importance of someone about to deliver devastating news disguised as triumph. "As you all know, I've been working on establishing the Harrison Family Foundation to cement our legacy of success and charitable giving. The board will consist of family members who exemplify our values of achievement, prosperity, and social standing. Obviously, Nathan, Claire, Richard, and our parents will serve as founding members. We'll be managing the family's charitable contributions and, more importantly, determining how the family trust is distributed to future generations. Only those who've proven themselves worthy of the Harrison name will have a say in these decisions." She paused, her eyes finding mine with cruel precision. "It's important that we maintain certain standards. We can't have the foundation's reputation compromised by unfortunate associations." The implication was crystal clear. Emma and I weren't just excluded from the foundation. We were being formally designated as unworthy of the Harrison name. Emma's face crumbled completely, her body shaking with silent sobs she was trying desperately to suppress. When she suddenly pushed back from the table and ran toward the stairs, Victoria called after her with mock concern. "Oh dear, was it something I said? You really should teach her better emotional regulation, Alexa. These outbursts are so inappropriate for family gatherings." The room erupted in laughter, my family genuinely amused by my daughter's pain, and something inside me that had been wound tight for 14 years finally snapped. I found Emma in the guest bathroom, curled on the floor, her body racked with sobs that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Through her tears, she choked out words that shattered what was left of my heart. "I'm ruining everything for you, Mom. I'm the reason they hate you. If I didn't exist, you could have had a normal life. You could have been successful like Aunt Victoria. I'm nothing but a burden, just damaged goods like Uncle Richard said. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just disappeared." She looked up at me with eyes so full of pain and self-loathing that I saw myself reflected in them, all the years of absorbed poison finally showing its devastating effect. I knelt beside my daughter, pulling her into my arms, feeling her body shake against mine as years of suppressed rage crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. "Listen to me, Emma. You are not damaged goods. You are not a burden. You are the greatest gift life has ever given me, and I will not let them dim your light for one more second. Tonight, everything changes. I promise you, baby, they will never hurt you again." As I held her, I thought of all the secrets I'd kept, all the ammunition I'd gathered over the years, but never used in the name of keeping peace. That peace had come at too high a price, my daughter's self-worth. As I helped Emma to her feet and wiped her tears, I made a decision that would shatter the Harrison family facade forever. They wanted to play games with our lives? They had no idea that I'd been preparing for this war for years. I returned to the dining room with the calm precision of a nurse preparing for emergency surgery, my exterior composed while inside I was mapping out exactly where to make the first incision. The family had moved on to dessert, their laughter still echoing from their treatment of Emma, champagne glasses raised in continued celebration of their superiority. They barely glanced up as I resumed my seat, assuming I'd return to endure more abuse like the good family doormat I'd always been. Victoria was mid-story about a recent courtroom victory when I cleared my throat and spoke with a voice that cut through their revelry like a scalpel through skin. You know, Victoria, speaking of courtroom victories, how's that ethics review going with your firm regarding your relationship with Derek Patterson? The champagne glass in her hand trembled slightly, her face paling as I continued. I'm sure Richard must be so understanding about those late nights at the office. Though I wonder if he knows that your case preparation meetings at the Ritz-Carlton every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon have nothing to do with legal briefs. Unless that's what you're calling them these days. I pulled out my phone, swiping to a folder I'd labeled insurance, and slid it across the table. The timestamps on these photos from the hotel security footage are particularly interesting. 2:30 every Tuesday, 3:45 every Thursday. Like clockwork. Your secretary, Michelle, was very helpful when I called concerned about your workload. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Richard's sharp intake of breath as he grabbed the phone, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and humiliation in rapid succession. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but before she could form a defense, I'd already moved on to my next target. Nathan, while we're sharing family news, how's that malpractice situation working out? You know, the one where you operated on Mrs. Chun while intoxicated? The one Dad paid $2 million to make disappear? I have copies of the settlement agreement, the original complaint, and most interestingly, the toxicology report that was supposed to be destroyed. I watched the color drain from his face as I produced a manila envelope from my purse. Your signature authorizing the destruction of evidence is particularly clear on page 12. Claire tried to stand, perhaps to leave or to physically attack me, but I wasn't done with her yet. Sit down, Claire. We wouldn't want you to have another one of your dizzy spells. Though I suppose mixing Xanax, Percocet, and Adderall will do that to a person. Your pharmacist at 3 different pharmacies, by the way, thinks you have 3 different names and addresses. Identity fraud is a serious crime, but I suppose when your pill addiction costs more than most people's mortgages, desperate times call for desperate measures. I pulled out another folder, this one thick with prescription records and credit card statements. The DUIs you've managed to hide are impressive too. Money really does buy silence, doesn't it? Though Officer Martinez kept very detailed personal notes about the night you offered him $50,000 to look the other way. Richard attempted to regain control, standing with what he probably thought was intimidating authority, but I'd saved something special for him. Richard, before you speak, you might want to consider that embezzlement is a federal crime. That creative accounting you've been doing with the Sterling Foundation funds? The ones you've been using to cover your gambling debts at the Borgata? I have 18 months of bank records showing exactly how you've been moving money through shell companies. Your bookie, Tony, was surprisingly chatty when I mentioned I was a concerned family member. Apparently, you owe him $300,000, and he's getting impatient. He even gave me recordings of your conversations. Very colorful language for an investment banker. My parents sat frozen at the head of the table, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them, but I had saved the best for them. Dad, Mom, you've built this entire empire on lies, so let's discuss some truth. Harold, does Mom know about Jennifer Walsh? Your secretary of 25 years who's been more than just an employee? The woman you've been supporting in that Upper East Side apartment? The one you had a son with 17 years ago? Yes, I know about James. He looks just like Nathan did at that age. I've been sending him birthday cards for years, signing them from your brother's family because he deserves to know he has relatives, even if you won't acknowledge him. Margaret's gasp was theatrical, but I wasn't buying it. Don't play the victim, Margaret. You've known about Jennifer for at least 15 years. Just like Harold knows about your psychiatric hospitalizations. Not the spa retreats you've been claiming, but actual involuntary commitments. 3 times in 10 years for bipolar episodes with psychotic features. Dr. Reginald at Passages was very concerned when I called as your healthcare proxy to discuss your medication compliance. Apparently, you've been quite creative in hiding your condition from your charity board friends. I wonder what the ladies' auxiliary would think if they knew their president spent 6 weeks in a locked ward after attacking a sales clerk with a champagne bottle. The room erupted in a chaos of denials, accusations, and threats. Victoria scrambled for damage control, her lawyer instincts kicking in despite her shock. You're bluffing. You don't have any of this. And even if you did, it would be illegal to obtain it. No court would admit. But her voice trailed off as I began laying out document after document on the table. Photos, bank statements, medical records, police reports, recorded conversations. Years of careful collection, all legally obtained through public records, concerned citizen reports, and the surprising willingness of people to share information when approached with genuine kindness instead of Harrison arrogance. Nathan lunged across the table, trying to grab the papers, knocking over wine glasses and sending china crashing to the floor. You vindictive witch. You've been planning this? Collecting dirt on your own family? What kind of person does that? His hands were shaking. Whether from rage or fear, I couldn't tell, but I remained calm, having anticipated this reaction. The kind of person who watches her family systematically destroy her child's self-worth year after year. The kind who keeps records in case she ever needs to protect her daughter from wolves dressed as relatives. The kind who learned that in the Harrison family, information is the only real currency. Harold finally found his voice, reverting to the authoritarian patriarch role that had always worked before. Enough. Alexa, you will destroy these documents immediately. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we will never speak of this again. If you don't, I will destroy you. I will use every connection, every resource, every dollar I have to bury you. You'll lose your nursing license. You'll never work in this state again. I'll have you declared an unfit mother and take Emma away from you. Don't test me, little girl. You have no idea what I'm capable of. His face was purple with rage, veins bulging in his neck as he delivered threats he'd used to control people for decades. Margaret tried a different approach, switching to the wounded mother act she'd perfected over the years. How could you do this to your family? After everything we've done for you? We took you in when you ruined your life with that pregnancy. We've included you in family events despite the embarrassment. We've given you money when you couldn't make ends meet. And this is how you repay us? By destroying everything we've built? You're sick, Alexa. You need help. This isn't normal behavior. This is delusional, paranoid. Just like your Aunt Susan. Remember what happened to her? The threat was subtle but clear. Aunt Susan had been institutionalized against her will for challenging the family narrative decades ago. But I was done being intimidated. Everything you've done for me? You mean the constant humiliation? The way you've made my daughter feel worthless? The money you've given came with strings designed to strangle me. And as for destroying what you've built, you did that yourselves. I'm just shining a light on the rot that's been there all along. I stood, gathering my documents with deliberate calm. Oh, and before you start making threats about lawsuits or custody battles, you should know that I've been recording this entire evening. Every insult, every threat, every admission of guilt. Audio and video, all perfectly legal since Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state, and you all signed those holiday photo release forms Mom insisted on. You really should read what you sign. The panic that swept through the room was palpable. Family members began frantically looking for cameras, patting their pockets for recording devices, their earlier bravado evaporating like champagne bubbles. Victoria's legal mind was racing, trying to find loopholes, while Nathan looked like he might vomit. Richard had gone silent, probably calculating how much this would cost him, while Claire was already reaching for her pills. My parents sat like statues, their entire worldview shattered in the span of 20 minutes. But the best was yet to come, because unbeknownst to them, Emma hadn't just been crying upstairs. My brilliant, tech-savvy daughter had been busy ensuring that the Harrison family's Christmas massacre would have witnesses far beyond this dining room. The family's shock lasted only moments before their survival instincts kicked in, and I watched them transform from stunned prey into cornered predators. Victoria was the first to recover, her legal training providing the framework for their counterattack as she stood and began pacing like a prosecutor preparing for cross-examination. Let's be clear about what's happening here, Alexa. You've just committed multiple felonies. Blackmail, extortion, invasion of privacy, illegal recording, and theft of private documents. I don't care what you think you have on us. No judge in this state will admire a vindictive woman who spent years plotting against her own family. By tomorrow morning, you'll be facing so many lawsuits you'll need to sell that pathetic apartment just to afford a public defender. Harold reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out his phone with the practiced ease of a man accustomed to solving problems with phone calls and wire transfers. I'm calling Judge Morrison right now. We golf together every Sunday, and his daughter clerks for Victoria's firm. We'll have restraining orders against you within the hour. But I'm feeling generous because it's Christmas, so here's my offer. Take this check for $50,000, sign an NDA, hand over every copy of whatever you think you have, and we never speak of this again. You and Emma can leave quietly, and we'll tell people you moved for a better job opportunity. Everyone saves face. He pulled out his checkbook, already writing, the amount growing to $75,000, then $100,000 as he watched my unwavering expression. Nathan's approach was more direct and physical, moving around the table toward me with a confident stride of someone who'd never faced real consequences. You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing detective while the rest of us were building actual careers? Give me your phone right now, or I'll take it from you. And those papers? Hand them over before I call security to escort you out. Yeah, that's right. Dad has a security team on speed dial. Former military, the kind of guys who don't ask questions when rich people need problems solved. You're out of your league here, little sister. He reached for my phone, but I stepped back, keeping the dining table between us while maintaining my grip on both my phone and documents. The moment Nathan mentioned physical confrontation, Richard saw an opening and began moving toward the stairs where Emma had retreated. Maybe we should have a conversation with Emma about all this. Kids her age are so impressionable, and it would be terrible if she got caught up in her mother's delusions. Sometimes children need to be protected from unstable parents. I'm sure she'd be better off staying here tonight while the adults sort this out. My brother-in-law is a family court judge, and he's seen cases where teenagers have to be removed from toxic home environments for their own safety. His intent was clear: use Emma as leverage to force my compliance. Claire, despite her pharmaceutical haze, joined the manipulation effort with her specialty brand of gaslighting. This is all so sad, really. Alexa, we've been worried about your mental state for years. This paranoid behavior, collecting information on family members, these delusions of persecution. It's textbook. I have several psychiatrist friends who specialize in this kind of breakdown. We could have you evaluated tonight. For your own good, of course. And Emma's. Growing up with an unstable mother can be so damaging. We've all seen the signs, but didn't want to say anything. The way you've isolated yourself, poisoned Emma against her own family, created this alternate reality where you're some kind of victim. Margaret stood slowly, her movements calculated for maximum dramatic effect as she clutched her pearls and adopted the tone of a long-suffering martyr. I'm calling Dr. Pemberton right now. He's the head of psychiatric services at Riverside, and he owes Harold several favors. A 72-hour hold for evaluation would give everyone time to calm down and think rationally. Alexa, darling, you're clearly having some sort of episode. This isn't normal behavior. Keeping files on your family? Making these wild accusations? It's exactly what happened with your Aunt Susan before we had to have her committed. These things run in families, you know. We're only trying to help you, protect you from yourself. She already had her phone out, scrolling through contacts with theatrical concern. Victoria's twins, who'd been watching the chaos with wide-eyed fascination, suddenly burst into rehearsed tears, their sobs suspiciously synchronized. Victoria immediately weaponized their distress, pulling them close while shooting me accusatory glares. Look what you've done. You've traumatized innocent children with your vindictive behavior. Bradley, Brittany, don't worry. And Alexa is just confused. Sometimes adults get sick in their minds and say things that aren't true. We'll make sure she gets help. She turned back to me, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. If you don't back down right now, I'll file emergency custody papers for Emma. Judges don't look kindly on mothers who expose children to this kind of hostile environment. I'll argue that you're teaching her to be manipulative and vindictive, turning her into a weapon against her own family. The attacks were coming from all sides now, each family member playing their assigned role in what felt like a choreographed performance they'd rehearsed without realizing it. Harold increased his offer to $200,000, then $300,000, the numbers climbing with his desperation. Nathan called 2 security guards who apparently waited outside during family gatherings, large men in dark suits who entered and stood by the doorways like silent threats. Richard had made it halfway to the stairs before I finally spoke, my voice cutting through their chaos with surgical precision. Richard, if you take one more step toward my daughter, the next call I make is to Tony about that $300,000 you owe him. I have his number on speed dial. Richard froze mid-step, his face draining of color. I continued, addressing each of them in turn. Victoria, file whatever you want. I have 17 years of documentation showing exemplary parenting while you've left your children to be raised by nannies. Nathan, touch me, and it's assault. Your security friends will be great witnesses. Mom, call Dr. Pemberton. I'd love to discuss your psychiatric history with him, including the incident where you tried to push Dad down the stairs during a manic episode. Claire, speaking of mental health, should we discuss the time you left your baby in the car for 3 hours while you were passed out in a Nordstrom dressing room? Harold slammed his fist on the table, making the remaining china jump and sending his wine glass crashing to the floor. Enough. You want war? You've got it. I'm disinheriting you as of this moment. You and that bastard child of yours will get nothing. 0. I'm calling my lawyer right now to change the will. You're no longer a Harrison. You're nothing. A nobody nurse with a nobody daughter, and after tonight, you'll be unemployed and homeless. I own half the hospital board where you work. One phone call, and you're finished. Your nursing license will be under review by Monday morning. Every hospital in the state will know you're unstable, untrustworthy, and unemployable. But before he could make his threats reality, a small voice came from the top of the stairs, strong and clear despite its youth. Hi everyone, I'm Emma, and I've been live streaming this entire dinner to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. My daughter stood at the railing, phone held high, her tears dried and replaced with a determination I'd never seen before. To the 15,000 people currently watching, thank you for your support. As you can see, my mom has been telling the truth about everything. And to those asking in the comments, yes, this is really how they treat us every single time we visit. I started recording after grandmother said I was too fat and Uncle Nathan called me a genetic mistake. Everything they've said tonight, every threat they've made, every admission of their crimes, it's all been broadcast live. My mom taught me to stand up to bullies, and I'm done being silent. The pandemonium that followed was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Family members lunged for phones, screaming at Emma to stop recording while simultaneously trying to explain to the live stream that this was all a misunderstanding. Victoria shrieked about privacy laws while Nathan tried to figure out how to shut down the internet. Richard was frantically calling his IT guy to see if live streams could be deleted, while Claire had given up all pretense and was openly popping pills. Margaret fainted, this time genuinely, crumpling to the floor while Harold stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed empire crumble in real time as thousands of comments flooded in, most supporting Emma and expressing outrage at the family's behavior. By the way, Emma added, her voice steady despite the chaos below, I've been documenting everything for years, just like Mom. Every cruel comment, every gift that was actually an insult, every time you made me cry myself to sleep. I have folders of evidence showing how you've treated us. And now the whole world has seen it too. The Harrison family legacy? It's trending #1 on social media right now, but probably not the way you intended. Merry Christmas, everyone. Consider this our family's gift to the internet, a masterclass in how not to treat people you claim to love. The doorbell rang with an urgency that cut through the chaos, and Harold's face went from purple to white as he peered through the window and saw who stood on his doorstep. Uncle Thomas pushed past the security guards as if they were made of paper, his presence filling the foyer with an authority that even Harold couldn't dismiss. Thomas had been exiled from the family 20 years ago for refusing to participate in one of Harold's shady business deals, and seeing him now, silver-haired but still imposing, was like watching a ghost materialize at the worst possible moment. "Hello, Harold. I've been watching Emma's live stream, and I thought it was time for a family reunion. Don't look so shocked, brother. You always knew this day would come." Behind Thomas came Jennifer Walsh, my father's mistress, but she wasn't the cowering other woman the family had always assumed her to be. She walked with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose, her 17-year-old son James at her side, the resemblance to Nathan at that age undeniable. 25 years, Harold. 25 years of being your dirty secret, of watching you play perfect family while denying your own son's existence. But Alexa has been the only Harrison to show us any kindness, sending birthday cards, checking in on James. So when I saw what you were doing to her and Emma tonight, I knew it was time to return the favor and tell my side of the story. The security guards moved to block more visitors, but they seemed to be arriving in waves, each one representing a different skeleton in the Harrison family closet. Victoria's former best friend, Jennifer Lawson, strode in with the determination of someone who'd waited years for this moment. "Victoria, remember when you sabotaged my partnership bid at the firm? When you planted those documents to make it look like I was embezzling? I lost everything, my career, my marriage, my reputation. But I kept every email, every text, every piece of evidence showing how you orchestrated my downfall. Alexa reached out to me last year, and we've been comparing notes. Turns out I wasn't your only victim, just the most thoroughly destroyed." Dr. Sarah Chin appeared next, Nathan's ex-girlfriend who'd mysteriously disappeared from his life 5 years ago. The family had been told she'd taken a job overseas, but the truth was far darker. "Nathan told everyone I abandoned him for my career, but he never mentioned the bruises, the control, the night he locked me in his apartment for 48 hours because I talked to a male colleague at a conference. I have medical records, photos, police reports that were never filed thanks to Harold's connections. When Alexa contacted me through mutual friends, I realized I wasn't alone, that the Harrison family had a pattern of destroying anyone who didn't fit their image." Even more shocking was the arrival of Richard's brother Kevin, who the family had always dismissed as the lesser Sterling sibling. "Richard, you always thought you were so clever, moving money through the family trust, using our mother's dementia to gain power of attorney and drain her accounts. But I've been documenting everything, working with financial investigators to trace where the money went. Those gambling debts? They're just the tip of the iceberg. Wait until everyone finds out about the Ponzi scheme you've been running with your golf buddies, using Harrison family connections to legitimize fraud." Maria, the family's former housekeeper who'd been dismissed 10 years ago, entered with her daughter Sophia, now a successful lawyer. "Mrs. Harrison, you fired my mother for theft, remember? Accused her of stealing jewelry that you'd actually sold to pay for your shopping addiction during a manic episode. My mother worked for your family for 20 years, raised your children while you were at your charity lunches, and you destroyed her reputation with lies. But Alexa helped us file a wrongful termination suit that you settled quietly to avoid publicity. Tonight, we're here to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people the Harrisons really are." The dining room had transformed into something resembling a courtroom, with witnesses arriving to testify against the family that had wronged them. Claire's college roommate appeared, revealing how Claire had stolen her identity to get prescriptions even back then. Harold's former business partner rolled in using a wheelchair, the result of an accident Harold had caused but blamed on him, destroying his career and leaving him disabled while Harold profited from their dissolved partnership. Each person who entered had a story, evidence, and most importantly, a connection to either me or Emma, who had spent years quietly building bridges with the people our family had burned. Thomas took center stage, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built his own empire without the Harrison taint. You see, Harold, when you exile people, when you destroy lives, when you treat human beings as disposable, you create a network of people with nothing left to lose. Alexa and Emma didn't have to work very hard to find allies. We found them. Every person you've wronged, every life you've ruined, every bridge you've burned, we've been waiting for someone brave enough to light the match. And tonight, your daughter and granddaughter didn't just light a match. They started a bonfire. Emma's live stream viewer count had climbed to over 50,000, with news outlets picking up the story and reporters already gathering outside the gates. The comment sections were flooded with similar stories from viewers about their own toxic families, creating a digital support group in real time. Someone had started a Harrison family Christmas, and it was trending nationally as more evidence poured in from unexpected sources. Former employees, discarded friends, business rivals, all contributing their pieces to the mosaic of Harrison family corruption. Margaret, who had recovered from her fainting spell, tried to regain control with her usual imperious tone. "This is absurd. You can't just barge into our home on Christmas Eve with these ridiculous accusations. Harold, call the police immediately. Have all these people arrested for trespassing, harassment, defamation. This is clearly a coordinated attack by jealous, unsuccessful people who can't accept their own failures. They're probably being paid by business competitors to destroy our reputation. None of this is admissible in any real court, and we'll sue every last one of them into bankruptcy." But the police were already there, having been automatically dispatched when Emma's live stream showed Nathan grabbing my arm earlier. 3 officers entered, their body cameras recording everything, and the lead officer addressed the room with professional calm. "We've received multiple calls about a domestic disturbance, possible assault, and threats of violence. We've also been monitoring the live stream and have witnessed what appears to be multiple admissions of criminal activity. While we sort this out, I'm going to need everyone to remain calm and keep their hands visible. No one is under arrest at this moment, but that could change depending on what our investigation reveals." Victoria tried her prosecutor voice on the officers, but they weren't impressed by her credentials or threats. Nathan's attempt to claim I'd assaulted him fell flat when the officers pointed out that the video clearly showed him as the aggressor. Richard's insistence that this was a private family matter was undermined by the 20-plus witnesses who'd arrived to share their stories. The Harrisons were used to controlling narratives, to having their version of events accepted without question, but tonight, in front of tens of thousands of witnesses and law enforcement, their power had evaporated like morning mist. Thomas approached me and Emma, placing protective hands on our shoulders as he addressed his brother one final time. "Harold, you've spent your entire life believing that money and connections could shield you from consequences. You raised your children to believe they were untouchable, superior, exempt from basic human decency. But tonight, your youngest daughter and your granddaughter have done what I never had the courage to do. They've shown the world who you really are. And unlike 20 years ago, when you could bury scandals with phone calls and payoffs, tonight's revelations are preserved forever in the digital age. Your legacy isn't what you built, Harold. It's what Alexa and Emma have exposed." Within hours of Emma's live stream ending, the video had been downloaded, shared, and reposted across every major social media platform, making any attempt at damage control futile. Major news outlets picked up the story with headlines like "Harrison Family Christmas Meltdown Goes Viral" and "Teenage Girl Exposes Family's Dark Secrets in Live Stream Watched by Millions." By morning, the Harrison name was trending worldwide, but not in the way my parents had always dreamed. Their carefully cultivated reputation of excellence and refinement had been replaced overnight with associations of abuse, corruption, and cruelty. Victoria's law firm acted swiftly to protect their own reputation, announcing an internal investigation into the allegations of adultery and ethical violations revealed during the live stream. The managing partners, already aware of rumors about Victoria's conduct but previously willing to overlook them due to her billable hours, now distanced themselves with corporate efficiency. Her office keycard was deactivated by morning, and a formal suspension letter was delivered by courier before she'd even left our parents' house. The State Bar Association announced their own investigation, particularly interested in the allegations of evidence tampering and framing Jennifer Lawson for embezzlement. Nathan's situation deteriorated even faster as the medical board launched an emergency review of his license, following the revelations about operating while intoxicated and the cover-up that followed. Presbyterian Hospital, facing a public relations nightmare, suspended him immediately pending investigation. Former patients began coming forward with their own concerns about his behavior, emboldened by the public nature of the scandal. The Chin family, whose matriarch had died during Nathan's botched surgery, announced they were filing a civil suit with the new evidence that had come to light, seeking justice they'd been denied years ago. Richard's financial house of cards collapsed spectacularly when the Securities and Exchange Commission opened an investigation based on the embezzlement allegations. His firm conducted a forensic audit that revealed the full extent of his theft, not just from the family foundation but from client accounts as well. The FBI raided his office, seizing computers and documents while news cameras captured every humiliating moment. His country club membership was revoked when the Ponzi scheme Kevin had mentioned came to light, affecting several prominent members who'd trusted Richard with their investments. Claire's multiple identities for prescription fraud triggered investigations from the DEA and local law enforcement. Her dealer networks, thinking she might cooperate with authorities to save herself, cut ties immediately. The country club ladies who'd overlooked her increasingly erratic behavior could no longer pretend not to notice, especially when the DUI cover-ups became public knowledge. Child Protective Services opened a case file to evaluate the safety of her children, who'd been primarily raised by nannies but still deserved protection from their mother's addiction. The damage to Harold and Margaret was perhaps the most complete, their entire social edifice crumbling as charity boards held emergency meetings to remove them from positions of leadership. The Harrison Foundation was frozen pending investigation of financial irregularities, and Harold's business partners began pulling out of deals, not wanting to be associated with the toxic brand the Harrison name had become. Margaret's psychiatric history, once carefully hidden, became fodder for gossip among the society women who'd pretended to be her friends while secretly resenting her condescension. The public response was overwhelmingly supportive of Emma and me, with thousands of messages pouring in from people who'd experienced similar family dynamics. A GoFundMe page someone started for Emma's college fund raised over $200,000 in 48 hours, with donors sharing their own stories of family trauma and praising our courage. Art schools and galleries reached out after seeing Emma's creative work in the background of videos, offering scholarships and exhibition opportunities that would have been unimaginable just days before. My own career took an unexpected turn when Riverside Medical Center, Harold's hospital, not only refused his demands to fire me, but offered me a promotion to head their new patient advocacy program. The board of directors, facing scrutiny over their previous willingness to bend to Harold's influence, wanted to demonstrate their commitment to ethical practices. Other hospitals began recruiting me as well, seeing my stand against corruption as evidence of the integrity they wanted in their leadership. Nursing organizations invited me to speak about standing up to power, turning our family's Christmas nightmare into a platform for positive change. Uncle Thomas proved instrumental in our transition, offering not just emotional support but practical assistance. His own business empire, built without Harold's tainted money, provided opportunities for both Emma and me. He helped us relocate to a better neighborhood, co-signing a lease when landlords hesitated despite my improved circumstances. His presence sent a clear message to what remained of the Harrison family power structure that we were no longer alone or vulnerable to their machinations. 3 months after that fateful Christmas Eve, the contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. Victoria's divorce proceedings had begun after Derek Patterson's wife also filed for divorce, creating a scandal that made headlines in legal publications. Her assets were frozen during the investigation, forcing her to move back into our parents' pool house like a teenager, her children enrolled in public school for the first time in their lives. The adjustment was brutal for the twins, who were learning that their mother's cruelty had cost them the privileged life they'd taken for granted. Nathan's medical license was permanently revoked after the full investigation revealed multiple instances of impaired practice that Harold had covered up. The civil suits bankrupted him despite malpractice insurance, as punitive damages for the cover-up far exceeded policy limits. His wife had filed for separation, taking their children to her family's home in Connecticut while Nathan faced potential criminal charges. He'd gone from star surgeon to unemployable pariah in a matter of months, his fall from grace documented gleefully by the same media that had once celebrated his achievements. Richard's arrest for embezzlement and fraud made national news, his perp walk in handcuffs becoming a defining image of privileged corruption facing consequences. The gambling debts to dangerous people remained unpaid as his assets were frozen, forcing him into protective custody for his own safety. Multiple fraud victims emerged once news of his arrest spread, creating a cascade of charges that would likely result in decades of imprisonment. His brother Kevin, working with authorities, helped recover some of the stolen funds, becoming an unlikely hero in the process. Claire's children were placed in temporary custody with her sister, while she entered court-mandated rehabilitation for the fourth time. The difference now was that she couldn't check herself out early or bribe her way to special privileges. Her supplier network dismantled, her prescriptions flagged in databases nationwide. She finally had to confront the addiction she'd hidden behind wealth and connections. Whether she'd succeed where she'd previously failed remained to be seen, but at least her children were safe from her influence. Harold and Margaret's divorce proceedings began when Jennifer Walsh filed a paternity suit on behalf of James, seeking recognition and retroactive support. The discovery process revealed more financial crimes as Harold had hidden assets from Margaret for decades, triggering her own legal assault on what remained of their fortune. They were forced to sell the family mansion to pay legal fees, their children too mired in their own problems to help. The estate sale became a social event, with former friends touring the house while pretending sympathy but secretly delighting in the downfall. Emma flourished in our new life, her confidence blooming once removed from the toxic environment of Harrison family gatherings. She'd started therapy to process years of emotional abuse, but her natural resilience shone through. Her art, which the family had dismissed as a waste of time, caught the attention of a gallery owner who'd seen her story online. Her first exhibition, titled Breaking the Silence, featured pieces inspired by our journey from victims to survivors. Every piece sold, with proceeds going to organizations supporting emotional abuse survivors. My relationship with healthcare advocacy expanded beyond my hospital role as I began consulting with organizations about creating safer environments for employees facing personal crises. The irony that Harold's attempts to destroy my career had instead launched it to new heights wasn't lost on anyone. I spoke at conferences about recognizing and addressing workplace bullying, especially when perpetrators had institutional power. My story resonated with countless professionals who'd faced similar situations but lacked the resources or support to fight back. The extended family members who'd remained silent during years of abuse began reaching out, some with genuine apologies, others clearly hoping to align themselves with the winning side of the family divide. I accepted apologies from those who showed real understanding of their complicity, but maintained firm boundaries against those who minimized or excused the abuse. Emma and I had learned that forgiveness didn't require renewed relationships, that we could release anger without embracing those who'd caused it. Grandma Rose, Harold's 90-year-old mother who'd been kept away from family gatherings for years due to her difficult nature, meaning her refusal to play along with Harold's narratives, reached out through Thomas. She'd watched the live stream from her assisted living facility and wept at seeing her fears confirmed about what Harold had become. Her subsequent decision to change her will, leaving everything to Emma and the grandson Harold refused to acknowledge, created fresh chaos among the family members still hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. Her handwritten note to Emma, praising her courage and expressing pride in her great-granddaughter, became one of our most treasured possessions. 1 year after that transformative Christmas Eve, I stood in our new living room, watching Emma arrange presents under our modest tree with a joy I'd never seen during our Harrison family Christmases. The apartment was smaller than my parents' powder room, but it radiated warmth and authenticity that no mansion could replicate. Emma had invited her new friends over for hot chocolate, their laughter filling the space with a kind of genuine happiness that couldn't be bought or faked. She discovered that real friends didn't care about your last name or your family's bank account. They cared about your character and your kindness. The healing journey hadn't been linear or easy, as both Emma and I discovered in our weekly therapy sessions. Dr. Martinez, our therapist who specialized in family trauma, had helped us understand that we'd been living in a state of chronic emotional abuse disguised as privilege. The constant criticism, the subtle undermining, the conditional love that was really no love at all, these things had shaped our worldview in ways we were only beginning to unravel. Some days were harder than others, when the old voices would creep in telling us we weren't good enough, but we learned to recognize those as echoes of abuse, not truth. My promotion to Director of Patient Advocacy at Riverside Medical had given me purpose beyond personal survival, allowing me to help others navigate healthcare systems that often favored the powerful over the vulnerable. I'd implemented programs ensuring that no patient could be silenced or ignored because they lacked connections or wealth. The bitter irony that Harold's Hospital had become a leader in ethical patient care under my direction wasn't lost on anyone who knew our history. Several nurses had privately thanked me for standing up to the Harrison influence that had poisoned the workplace for years. Emma's artistic career had blossomed in ways that still amazed me, her pain transformed into powerful visual narratives that resonated with audiences worldwide. Her second exhibition, After the Storm, had attracted international attention, with pieces acquired by major collectors who saw in her work a unique voice emerging from adversity. She'd started mentoring other young artists from difficult backgrounds, creating the supportive environment she'd never had in her own family. At 16, she possessed a wisdom and empathy that many never achieved, though I wished she hadn't had to earn it through suffering. The surprise of finding love hadn't been part of my plan, but David entered our lives with the quiet persistence of morning sunlight. A widowed teacher at Emma's school, he'd initially reached out about her remarkable progress, but our conversations had evolved into something neither of us expected. He understood boundaries, respected our journey, and most importantly, saw Emma as a bonus rather than baggage. His own teenage son Michael had become friends with Emma, their shared love of art creating a bond that felt organic rather than forced. When David proposed on a quiet Tuesday evening with Emma's enthusiastic blessing, I realized that family could be chosen rather than endured. Uncle Thomas had become the grandfather figure Emma deserved, his weekly dinners with us a new tradition built on respect and genuine affection. He'd helped establish the Emma Foundation, a nonprofit supporting young people escaping toxic family situations, funded partially by the success of Emma's art but primarily by his desire to prevent others from suffering as we had. James, my newly acknowledged half-brother, had become part of our chosen family, his relief at finally being recognized worth more than any inheritance. The relationship between him and Emma as cousins had developed naturally, both understanding what it meant to be family secrets finally brought to light. The support group I'd started for family scapegoats had grown from 5 people meeting in a coffee shop to over 200 members gathering monthly in a community center. We called ourselves the Phoenixes, rising from the ashes of family dysfunction to create better lives. The stories shared in those meetings reminded me that our experience, while extreme in its public exposure, wasn't unique. Countless people carried wounds inflicted by those who should have loved them most, and finding community in that shared experience had been transformative for all of us. The fate of the Harrison family read like a Shakespearean tragedy in the business sections of newspapers. Victoria had been disbarred after the investigation revealed extensive corruption, her attempts to practice law in other states blocked by her spectacular public fall from grace. She worked as a paralegal now, the irony of taking orders from lawyers she once would have dismissed cutting deep. Nathan's journey from surgeon to medical equipment sales representative illustrated how far he'd fallen. His attempts to trade on the Harrison name met with uncomfortable silence from potential clients who'd seen the live stream. Richard's imprisonment had made headlines again when fellow inmates discovered his history of financial crimes against working-class people. His request for protective custody had been granted, but prison life remained a daily reminder of consequences he'd never imagined facing. Claire's fifth stint in rehab had finally taken hold, though her children remained with their aunt, visiting only under supervision. She'd written Emma a letter of apology that we'd read together in therapy, acknowledging the harm she'd caused while under the influence of both substances and family culture. Harold and Margaret's war against each other had consumed what remained of their fortune, their divorce attorneys the only winners in a battle that had destroyed everything they'd built together. Harold lived in a studio apartment now, his calls to former business associates unreturned, his presence at familiar restaurants met with uncomfortable stares. Margaret had moved in with her sister in Arizona, her social media filled with vague inspirational quotes about rising above betrayal, seemingly unaware of her role in creating the family dynamic that had imploded so spectacularly. This Christmas Eve, our small apartment overflowed with chosen family as Uncle Thomas, James, Jennifer, David, Michael, and several Phoenix members gathered to celebrate. Maria and Sophia brought homemade tamales, sharing traditions from their culture that enriched our table far more than any catered Harrison feast. Dr. Sarah Chin arrived with her new husband, her survival of Nathan's abuse transformed into advocacy for domestic violence victims. Even Kevin Sterling joined us, his role in exposing Richard's crimes having freed him from his own family's toxic dynamics. As I watched Emma help serve dinner, her movements confident and graceful, I marveled at the young woman she'd become. The shy, wounded girl who'd run crying from my family's cruelty had transformed into someone who understood her worth came from within, not from others' opinions. She caught my eye and smiled, that radiant expression that had been so rare in our Harrison days, but now came naturally and often. When she raised her glass for a toast, her voice carried the strength of someone who'd faced the worst and chosen to become better rather than bitter. Last Christmas, I thought I was worthless because people who shared my blood told me so, Emma began, her words bringing tears to many eyes. But this year, I understand that family isn't about DNA or fancy houses or important names. It's about the people who see your light when others try to dim it, who stand beside you when the world feels against you, who choose to love you not despite your struggles, but because of how you face them. To our chosen family, to second chances, to the courage to walk away from those who harm us and toward those who heal us. Merry Christmas to the family we've built from the ashes of the one we left behind. The journey from that horrible Christmas Eve to this moment of joy hadn't been easy or straightforward. There were still days when the old wounds ached, when Emma worried about running into her cousins, when I second-guessed my decision to go nuclear on my family. But sitting in our small apartment surrounded by people who'd chosen to love us authentically, I knew we'd made the right choice. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and your children is the courage to say enough to those who mistake cruelty for love. The Harrison family legacy hadn't disappeared, it had simply transformed. Where they'd built monuments to ego and exclusion, we'd created communities of support and acceptance. Where they'd hoarded resources and wielded them as weapons, we'd shared our story and resources to help others escape similar situations. Where they defined worth by achievements and associations, we'd learned that true value came from how you treated others when you had nothing to gain. The family name that once opened doors now served as a cautionary tale, but from its ashes had risen something far more valuable, the knowledge that we deserved love without conditions, respect without prerequisites, and family that built us up rather than tore us down. Every Christmas since has been truly peaceful. What would you do if your family treated you this way? Have you ever had to stand up to toxic family members? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with difficult family situations. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about finding strength in the face of adversity and building the life you deserve. Thank you for being part of our journey, and remember, sometimes the best family is the one you choose for yourself. Wishing you all a Christmas filled with genuine love and authentic connections.